thanks for tuning in. This is the third sermon video that we're doing, and we're so excited that you're here joining us tonight. Yet again, I know this is kind of weird, this is different. If you've missed it over the last week, we are now going live twice a week for you guys. Mondays at noon, we are doing YouTube Live. Just come hang out, talk to other people. Last week we played Two Truths, a Lie, and it was awesome. And then Wednesday, we're going live on Instagram at noon. So if you have those social medias or if you have that availability, please come hang out, talk to us. We spent like 20 minutes talking about what we had for lunch, and we sent pictures of it, so it was super fun. But we hope that you can join us. We hope that you can still find those ways to get connected and build those relationships with us, because we miss you guys, and we would love to see you there. So tonight we will be kicking off a brand new series called Happy Easter. Okay, Easter is 2 weeks away, and we are going to look at this idea of Easter, this season of Easter. Why do we celebrate it? Why do we care? Why does it matter for us today? This is so important. I don't know if you guys realize this, but without Easter and without the Easter story, the resurrection of Jesus, the death on the cross, all of those things, we would not have such a strong connection with Christ the way that we do today. That story of Jesus, the Easter story, the resurrection, all of that means so much to us. It's so important for our understanding of God, understanding of the Bible, understanding of why Jesus matters to us today. And so it's so important to look at the Easter story, look at the Easter idea, and figure out how we fit into it, figure out how it impacts us today in 2020, right in our lives. And so we're super excited for this, and we're really excited to look at what the Bible says about Easter, why we should be happy about Easter, and what it means for us. And so I don't know about you guys, but Easter is one of my favorite holidays, okay? The weather's getting warmer, my family usually comes over, we have a big meal, we all dress up nice for church, looking good, you got your Easter outfit planned. Easter's just an awesome time. But I know that there's also a lot of people who have had bad experiences with Easter. Have you ever had one? Maybe, your outfit, you spilled something on it, or church was too long, or whatever it is. Maybe you just didn't have a good Easter experience. And maybe some of you have had scary Easter experiences, okay? For me, I've never had a scary Easter experience, but I'm mainly talking about the Easter Bunny, okay? The Easter Bunny can be creepy if it's not done right. So let's go ahead and look at some of these pictures of Easter bunnies gone wrong, okay? This first one, kind of scary. Have to say that I would not like to get a basket from that Easter bunny, have to say. Okay, this one is just downright terrifying. I don't know how this little girl is smiling through what is sitting behind her. This one I like to call the Pinterest Easter Bunny costume. Okay, look at that thing. He clearly went on Google or the internet and found a picture of what he wanted it to look like, and he tried his hardest, but I have to say that it's not too great. Then this one might be my favorite because it literally looks like he is trying to kidnap her. Okay, that is terrifying. Look at her face. Look at the just immense fear that is. Wow. All right. So I sure hope that you have never experienced an Easter bunny that terrifying, because if you have, maybe you're scarred thinking about Easter. Maybe you never want to think about Easter again. If that happened to you, I apologize. But even if this has never happened to you and you've only had great experiences with Easter, you can relate to one thing about these pictures. You can relate to the idea of fear. All of us have experienced fear. In some way, shape, or form, something scares us, something makes us worry, something makes us doubt, and we fear, we worry, we get afraid of whatever this thing is. So all of us, regardless of who you are, regardless of where you are right now in your life, how old you are, where you go to school, whatever, you've experienced fear before, okay? And fear is a really, really good tool from the enemy, from the devil. Because what fear does is it takes away your happiness like that. There isn't many other emotions or expressions of our feelings in our lives that takes away happiness so fast. But fear just takes away happiness so quick and so effortless. Fear comes in, you start to worry about something, you start to doubt something, you start to get afraid of something, boom, you're not very happy anymore. Your outlook on life or on your situation changes just because you're fearful, just because you're worrying about something, right? But our idea and our main idea for this first week of our Easter series is that Easter means that fear isn't final, okay? All of these fears that you can have in your lives, and I'm sure we could name a million of them, boil down to the fear of something ceasing to exist, the fear of something coming to an end, right? Which is why a lot of people, and many people that you meet, and maybe yourself, are afraid of death. We're afraid of life ceasing to exist, of coming to an end, of coming to a close. That scares us. As people, that's something that we're not familiar with. We kind of expect a lot of these happy feelings and great things to go on forever, but we have a fear of things ending, which means a lot of us have a fear of death. But Jesus, and the story of Easter, if you don't know, is Jesus coming to earth, right? He lived here for 33 years, dying on the cross, and rising 3 days later. Okay, the resurrection is so foundational to our understanding of Jesus, because what that does for us, that resurrection, that fact that Jesus came back to life, proves that Jesus conquered death. And when Jesus conquered death, he also conquered fear. He also conquered everything that you could be experiencing, that you could be struggling with, that you could be dealing with. Jesus conquered it. The whole entire point of the Easter story, the whole point of Jesus dying on the cross, of Jesus rising again, of Jesus being who he was to show you that he is greater than whatever you're worrying about. He is greater than whatever you fear, whatever you struggle with, right? And so we're going to look at a verse in 1 Corinthians. Okay, this was written by Paul, the Apostle Paul. We talk about him very often. He wrote a lot of the New Testament. But what's interesting is that Paul actually had a pretty messed up life before he met Jesus. Okay, so Paul, his job was to get people to be afraid. Paul wanted people to be so afraid of him, or so afraid of what was going to happen if people continued to follow Jesus, that he actually got people to run away from the church and run away from Christ's teachings. So Paul was not a very nice guy, and Paul was super against what Jesus wanted to teach. And when Jesus died on the cross, can you imagine Paul's joy? Paul's enemy, Paul's adversary, if you will, was Jesus, because he didn't want people to follow him or believe in his teachings or do what he was asking them to do. So when he died on the cross, Paul was probably like, oh yeah, that is a major win. Let me go tell all the boys, Jesus is dead, what's up? He was celebrating. He was so excited. But then 3 days later, the news comes that Jesus rose again. I guarantee that Paul was immediately filled with fear. His happiness, boom, gone. Because he was worried of what this meant for him. And he was worried that everything he had been teaching, everything that he had been showing people about how Jesus was not the Son of God, maybe he was wrong. And so Paul's life changed when he was actually on the road to Damascus and he met Jesus face to face. So his adversary, the person he thought was dead, now meets him face to face after the resurrection. Paul's life has changed. Paul just cannot believe that this has happened, right? Because his fear, his doubt, his whatever he had about Jesus was gone. Jesus got rid of all of that when he died on the cross, when he rose again, when he met Paul on that road. And what's funny is that Paul actually goes on to be, as we know, one of the biggest authors in the New Testament, but also he preached and he taught all the time, and he actually ended up dying for that. In Paul's time, in Bible times, it was against the law to preach the gospel. It was against the law to preach Jesus' teachings. And so Paul, he could have had a lot of fear. He could have been very worried about, okay, if I teach this or if I preach this, then they're going to do this to me and they're going to throw me in jail and but that didn't stop him, because Paul believed so much in what the Bible said. He believed so much in who Jesus was that his fear was gone. He realized that no matter what happened to him, no matter what people did to him, no matter where he ended up, it did not trump the fact that Jesus was in control, that Jesus loved him, that Jesus forgave him, that Jesus radically changed his life. And so in 1 Corinthians 15, 54 and 55, it says, death has been swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? What a powerful set of verses. Because what Paul is saying here is that because of Jesus, because of the Easter story that we have probably heard a million times, death has been swallowed up in victory. Fear has been swallowed up in victory. Which means that those things we're afraid of, those things we struggle with, those things that we just feel like we just can never get by, Jesus has already conquered for us. On the cross, through the resurrection, through this Easter story, Jesus has taken those things and he has said, this is not the end. These things you're fearful of, these things you're struggling with, these things you're dealing with, this is not final. This is not how the story ends. And he proves that by dying and raising 3 days later. Because we no longer have to fear death. We no longer have to fear fear. We no longer have to get worried about, okay, this might be the end. This might be where things cease to exist. This might be when my life comes to a halt. This might be because Jesus opened up heaven and he opened up the ability for us to have a relationship with him. Which means if we choose to have a relationship with him, there is no death. Jesus has beat death. Jesus has conquered death. Swallowed up in victory is what Paul says about death. That's a bold statement. But Easter proves that fear is not final. Because the story of Jesus, the story of the resurrection, the story of the cross, proves that Jesus can conquer whatever you're going through. Jesus, he conquered death. That's a big deal. Jesus looked death straight in the face and he said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to prove that God has something better planned than death. God has life, life to the full, planned for the people who choose to accept him. And so for us today, what does this mean? Well, it means a couple things. It means that if you have a relationship with Christ, if you're somebody who reads the story like Easter or just the Bible as a whole, and you believe that it's truth and you want to serve God and you have a relationship with God, if that's you, if you're at that place in your life, then what this means is that whatever you're fearful of, whatever you're struggling with, you can just kind of hand that over to God. You can say, God, I trust this book. I trust this word. I trust it's from you. I trust you want what's best for me and you're going to work things out for my good. And so regardless of what's going on in my life, Lord, I'm going to put my trust in you. Lord, I trust you so much. I love you so much. I see that you conquered death. You conquered life. You conquered sin. You conquered everything. Therefore, you can handle whatever I'm going through. You can handle whatever my struggle is. Lord, I trust you with that. And if you don't have a relationship with him, then this is the perfect time. Look at our world right now. There is fear, there is doubt, there is worry, and maybe in your own home, in your own life, you're dealing with that too. But this story of Easter, this story of the resurrection, this story of death being conquered, swallowed up in victory, proves that all you have to do is have a relationship with him. Because what's really interesting about this story is that same power that Jesus had to raise from the dead, the same power that Jesus had on the cross, is in you today. That same power, when you believe in him, when you accept him, when you have a relationship with him, that same power fills your heart, fills your life. It guides everything you do. That's called the Holy Spirit. And so we no longer have to be afraid of these things in our lives. We no longer have to be fearful of whatever comes our way, because that same power that raised Jesus from the dead, the story that we know, the story that we talk about around this season of our lives, that same power is alive in your heart if you accept Jesus. Which means praying to him and saying, Lord, I'm a mess. Lord, I struggle. Lord, I have a lot of things that I deal with, but Lord, I believe in you and I trust you and I want you to come into my life, come into my heart, change who I am, change the way I look at the world, change the way that I deal with these fearful situations. Lord, I want to be a follower of you. I want to have a relationship with you. I want to know you deeply. When we get there, that power that raised Jesus from the cross, that power that swallowed up death, swallowed up fear and victory, now lives within you, now lives within your heart. Which means that you no longer have to fear. You no longer have to be worried. You no longer have to doubt things. And when you do, that's okay. We're human. We're going to do it. But you can turn to this book and you can say, Lord, this is your word. I believe it. I trust it. Everything in it is true. So therefore, I'm going to put my trust in it. Therefore, I'm going to read stories like the resurrection of Jesus and see that nothing can hold you down. Nothing can stop you. Therefore, if I'm a follower of you, I'm going to believe that you've put that spirit in me. And you have a plan for me, and you have a will for me, and you're going to lead me through even the craziest, darkest, scariest times of my life. Because Easter proves, and it shows us, that death is not final. Fear is not final. Thank you so much for watching, and I sure hope we can see you same time, same place, next week for part 2 of our Easter series.